Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're tackling a fascinating bit of military strategy straight out of ancient China. We're talking about Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao.
It sounds a lot more complicated than it is.
Yeah, and honestly, this stuff is way more than just ancient history.
Well, absolutely. This is about strategic thinking. The kind of stuff that applies whether you're on a battlefield or in a boardroom even. We're going to break it down, see how it works, why it's so darn effective, and we'll even see how it pops up later on, like with Mao Zedong.
Right, and the cool thing is, we've got a real mix of sources to pull from. We've got historical accounts of the Battle of Guiling, which is like the classic example of this tactic.
Yeah, a real classic.
And then we've got some analysis of how Mao, put his own spin on things. But before we get all, lost in the weeds, maybe we should start with the basics. Like, what exactly is Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao?
Okay, so picture this. You're trying to help out an ally, right? Their city is surrounded, under siege, but the enemy, oh, they're way too strong for a head-on attack.
Sounds kind of hopeless.
That's where this tactic comes in. Instead of hitting them directly, you hit them where it hurts, but somewhere they don't expect.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Attack something vital to them, something seemingly unrelated to the siege. Force them to pull back and defend their own interests. Indirect pressure, you see.
So it's like a kind of a judo move,
Yeah.
using their strength against them.
Exactly.
I'm starting to get the concept, but like, how did this actually play out? I mean, did this really work in a real battle?
Oh, yeah, it did. It's actually a pretty famous story. There's this classic anecdote about General Tianji of the Qi state. And his advisor, Sun Bin, brilliant guy. This was back when the powerful Wei army was laying siege to the Zhao capital. Everybody and their brother thought the only option was a straight-up fight.
I bet Sun Bin had other ideas.
You bet he did. He was like, hold on, don't attack the army at Zhao, attack the Wei capital itself. Sounds crazy, right?
Kinda, yeah. Attack the capital when they're busy sieging someone else? Bold move.
But Sun Bin knew the Wei couldn't just ignore a threat to their heartland, their home turf.
Okay, that makes sense. But what if the Wei were just like, too bad, we're taking Zhao first and then we'll deal with you?
Well, Sun Bin was pretty sure this would work, and for a couple of reasons. First, he understood how his opponent thought, knew they'd panic and overreact to a threat to their capital. And second, he didn't just plan for the initial attack, he planned for what would happen after.
So he was thinking several steps ahead.
Absolutely. Predicted the Wei army's retreat route and everything, set up an ambush at a place called Guiling, knowing they'd be exhausted and vulnerable on their way back.
Wow. So he basically turned the enemy's retreat into his own advantage.
Clever.
That's Sun Bin for you.
So this wasn't just like a theoretical idea. This really happened.
Oh yeah, it did. The Battle of Guiling. Classic example, just like we were saying. Same scenario. Wei, led by a general named Pang Huan, besieging the Zhao capital. And Qi, with Tianji and Sun Bin calling the shots, they come to Zhao's rescue. Okay, so they do this surprise attack on the Wei capital, right?
Yeah.
But how do they even pull that off? Wouldn't an army marching on the capital be, like, pretty easy to spot?
It was more complicated than that, a bit more subtle. Part of it was deception, making the Wei think they were really going for the capital. Had to sell it.
Ah, I see. A bit of trickery.
But here's the interesting part. They used alliances to their advantage. They had help from a smaller state, also called Wei, funnily enough.
Wait, two Weiss? That's going to get confusing.
Think of it like, two companies, both named Apple. One is a little startup, the other's, well, the Apple.
Okay, I get it. Qi was using the little apple to their advantage.
Exactly. They moved through territory controlled by the smaller Wei and some other allies, basically sneaking up on the bigger Wei army.
So they were playing this big, complex game on the whole geopolitical board, basically, setting up their move. And Pang Huan fell for it.
Hook, line, and sinker. He abandoned the siege at Zhao and ran back to defend his capital right into Sun Bin's trap at Guiling. And yeah, Qi won big. Zhao was safe. They proved they were a force to be reckoned with, all thanks to Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao.
Wow. It's pretty clear that Sun Bin wasn't just a military guy. He was a psychologist, too.
Oh, yeah.
He really knew how to, like, play on his opponent's fears.
For sure. But the story doesn't end there. Fast forward a bunch of centuries, and we see those same ideas popping up again with Mao Zedong.
Okay, so now we're talking Mao Zedong, guerrilla warfare, ancient Chinese tactics. It's all connected, right?
Yeah.
How did he make that leap?
Well, Mao was a big history buff, loved those classic military strategies, but he wasn't trying to, recreate those old battles exactly.
Right, he was dealing with a whole different world.
Exactly. 20th century conflicts,
Oh,
Civil
yeah.
War, fighting the Japanese, totally different.
Yeah, so how do you take something like Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao that seems, I don't know, designed for huge armies, sieges, and make it work for guerrilla warfare? Seems like a stretch.
The thing is, Mao understood it wasn't about the specific moves, it was about that principle of indirect pressure. You find the enemy's weak spots and you hit them, even if it doesn't seem connected to, the main fight.
Okay, I'm starting to see it. But like, how did that play out in, an actual campaign?
Well, Mao had this saying, know your enemy and know yourself, and in 100 battles you will never be defeated. He was all about intelligence, analyzing his own forces, sure, but even more so, the enemy.
So like Sun Din predicting the Wei retreat, but Mao was doing it on a bigger scale.
Exactly. But instead of retreat routes, he's figuring out how to lure them into traps, mess up their supplies, hit them when they're weak. Guerrilla warfare, IS, indirect warfare. You're not looking for that one big battle. You're wearing them down over time, chipping away at, well, their supplies, their morale, everything.
So harassing supply lines, little attacks here and there, picking the time and place. It's like he created his own WN version of Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao.
You got it. Think about it. You're constantly hitting them where they don't expect it. They're always reacting to you. You're calling the shots. They're on the defensive, always a step behind.
Must have been super frustrating to fight against that. Like trying to, I don't know, swat a fly that keeps buzzing around.
Exactly. And those little attacks, they add up. Demoralize an army, wreck their plans, can lead to their downfall even.
So Mao wasn't just winning battles. He was winning the whole mental game, too. Keeping him off balance, tilting the scales in his favor.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And his success proves this isn't just some old theory. It's a core principle of strategy. You can apply it in so many ways.
This is a serious deep dive. From ancient China to revolutions, all connected to this one idea.
And here's where it gets really interesting. If it worked for armies, for revolutions even, what about in, I don't know, everyday life? Business, politics, even personal stuff. It's about understanding, leverage, pressure points, getting what you want indirectly.
You've got me thinking. I can see how this could apply in a lot of situations. But before we go there, I want to make sure we've got the details right.
Of course. Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao isn't like a magic bullet. You got to analyze the situation, think strategically, really understand your opponent, what motivates them, their weak spots, all of it.
So it's not just about being sneaky or whatever. It's about being smart, picking your battles.
That's it. And that's what we're going to look at next. How can we take this ancient wisdom and apply it today to the challenges we face in the modern world?
Okay, so we've covered ancient battles, we've talked revolutions, but now I want to bring this Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao into like the modern world, the 21st century. Where do we see this kind of thinking happening today?
Well, the digital world is a good place to start.
Mm.
Information, right? It's power. And sometimes people use that power in ways that, well, they kind of mirror this old tactic.
Okay, that's interesting. Give me an example, though. How does, Besiege Wei work in the digital world?
Okay, let's say there's a country, right? And they want to cause trouble for another country. But a direct cyber attack, like hitting their power grid or something, too risky, could escalate things.
Right. Makes
So
sense.
instead, they might go after something that seems less important. A bank, maybe. A media outlet. Create a distraction.
So it's not about the target itself. It's about the chaos it causes. Like economic problems, fake news spreading. The other country's got to deal with all that.
Exactly. Their attention is split, their resources are stretched thin, and that might open up weaknesses somewhere else. It's indirect pressure, but in the digital realm.
It's like a magician's trick. Everyone's watching the bank getting hacked, but meanwhile, something else is going on.
Yeah, you got it. It's about using those distractions, those moments when people aren't looking, to get what you want. And the thing is, sometimes the target doesn't even realize they've been played until it's too late.
Wow. This is making me rethink how I think about strategy. It's not just armies anymore. It's cyber attacks, information wars, even how companies compete.
Yeah, it's a powerful concept. Makes you think outside the box, see the connections between things, realize that sometimes the best way to win is to be unexpected.
It's like Besiege Way to Rescue Zhao is a lens. You can use it to see the world differently.
Yeah.
Understand why people do things, the power dynamics, how strategy shapes everything, even when we don't realize it.
That's a great way to put it. And the more we rely on technology, the more important information becomes. Well, these old principles are only going to become more relevant.
So for our listeners, what's the key takeaway here? What should they be thinking about now that they know about Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao?
I think the most important thing is awareness. Realizing that every action, every choice we make, it can have ripple effects, unintended consequences. And sometimes the best way to get what you want is to think indirectly. Find those pressure points, the things that give you leverage.
It's a good reminder that strategy isn't just for like generals or CEOs or whatever. It's a skill anyone can learn and use in everyday life. Getting a raise, navigating a tough conversation, all sorts of things.
Absolutely. And hey, maybe understanding this ancient tactic can even give you an advantage online. Think twice before you click that link, share that post. You might be playing right into someone else's strategy.
That's a good point to end on, I think. Be aware, be strategic. And remember, sometimes the best path to victory is the one less traveled. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao.
My pleasure. It's been fun.
And until next time, keep those ancient principles in mind and keep exploring the world with a strategic eye.